This residency is called Sound House, and inspiration for it is some writings by the 17th century Francis Bacon. So we've got an enormous selection of instruments here this week. We've got 4 harps, we've got a big triple harp, we've got 2 Gothic harps, one with bray pins which make a great buzzing sound, and we've got a Celtic harp. Then I have with me a nickel harper, which is a Swedish bowed keyed fiddle, a hardanger fiddle. I have a baroque violin, a hurdy-gurdy, and this fantastic tromba marina, which is like a 2-metre long instrument that was around from medieval times right up to baroque times. Then we have a violone, and we have a viola bastarda, which is like a tenor viol with sympathetic strings. We've got various dulcimers, a santuri and a kanun, a baroque guitar, we've got lots of percussion, and we have a great deal of electronic sound equipment as well.
I've also got this software called Ableton Live, which basically lets me process the incoming sounds of the musicians, and they're all mic'd up, and apply various sort of reverbs and echoes and filterings and stuff. And I can also record them in real time as they're playing. So I end up with a little sort of sample of their sound, which I can then again sort of process in real time and play back in to the improvisation. Yeah, it's very flexible. I can control it all from here in quite a nice sort of tactile way from this controller I've got here.
So we're using 2 bits of texts from the writings of Francis Bacon. One is from his utopian novel, I suppose, which was called The New Atlantis, and the other is from a natural history, which is a collection of kind of scientific observations and experiments called Sylva Sylvarum, and both these were published posthumously in 1626. Sylva Sylvarum is a collection of observations and experiments, and 2 of the chapters of Sylva are really just about sound, how sound works, and he conducts various experiments and he proposes various theories. So he talks about what happens to sound when you pass it through tubes, or what the effects of sympathetic vibration are, or about dynamics and different types of sound.
One of our experiments was seeing how fast sound would travel down a pipe and whether it was different from the speed at which it would travel through air.
And so we took a bit of downpipe, quite a long bit, and we took it outside, and we have various instruments with us here, including a sackbut. So, for example, John Banks, one of the members of our group, blew notes down this, and we measured the decibel level as those notes came out.
And then he managed to get his sackbut jammed down the end of one of our large collection of plastic plumbing pipes, and we measured the speed of that, and they were actually exactly the same, which is interesting.
Jean Kelly, who's our harpist, decided to take her harp out too, and that had a really rather remarkable effect because the wind was blowing and set all the strings vibrating. It was incredibly beautiful and moving.
And actually, it was quite incredible, creating this very, very intense, constantly moving sound, which I've recorded and we've used as the basis of a quite long improvisation. It was an astonishing sort of almost a kind of cosmic experience, because I think because you hear the movement of the wind through the harp, obviously changing in dynamic and timbre, and at the same time you're feeling the impact of the wind on your body, and also out of your peripheral vision seeing the wind moving the reed beds. The other thing Francis Bacon's really interested in is pipes and what happens to sound when it goes through pipes.
Then that led into another experiment where we held up the tube against the harp, and that the wind kind of created a low kind of almost bass drone, which then accompanied the sounds coming from the harp. And so John Nichols recorded that, and we took it back into the studio and then made a piece using those recordings and also bringing in some 17th century music. Before gravity had been identified, Francis Bacon suggests that sound works differently according to whether it's moving downwards or moving upwards. And so we tested this theory with a tube, and we held the tube from the top of the balcony in the Hoffman building down to the ground floor and tried measuring the sound in both directions. And I'm afraid we proved Francis Bacon wrong.
We did a nice experiment yesterday where we recorded the sound of the musicians playing just through a pipe. So we got a large plastic plumbing pipe, stuck a microphone down one end of it. They all played, I recorded the sound. I then played the recording back into the room and then re-recorded that sound again through the microphone in the pipe, and then repeated that 4 or 5 times. And actually what we found is that the sound of the individual instruments kind of dissolves away completely, and it just resolves into the very basic overtones and partials really astonishingly quickly. So we're going to use that as the basis of a sort of improvisation composition as well.
We did an experiment in sympathetic vibration. So Alison McGillivray, who plays the violone and viola bastarda, took her viola bastarda and she put a reed from the reed beds here, balanced it on the sympathetic strings and bowed the playing strings, and they made the sympathetic strings vibrate and the reed falls off. This is really almost a complete replica of the effects of sympathetic vibration that are described by Francis Bacon in Sylva. In our performances of Soundhouse, there'll be a backdrop of 17th century music, most of which might have been heard in England during the lifetime of Francis Bacon. It's a kind of musical context for the piece. And then between those, we'll be performing these interludes, which we've made in collaboration with John Nichols.
I think how we're going to structure things is we're going to have repertoire pieces that are then going to bleed into these improvisational, much freer interludes, we're calling them, some of which will be based on fragments of phrases I'll have grabbed out of the repertoire piece that I've just been playing, and others, we've also been gathering a lot of sounds just from roundabout, say birds, water, wind. And actually what you realise is that there are musical dimensions to almost any kind of sound.